All right. Welcome. We are starting our fifth negotiation with between PEA and Polk County Public Schools. Today is May 5th, 2022. And we'll go ahead and get started. So from last time, we had TA'd on the non-discrimination clause in the teacher contract. And so we now have that language mirrored in the para contract, Article 15, and the ESP contract, Article 13. And so I did send that over to Laura just a little bit ago, but I just lifted the language from the teacher to the para and ESP contract. So if you just wanted to, that I've just started to sign it so we could get it going, but I just took the language from the teacher and moved it in.
Delay.
What? Delay. That's a delay.
Well, there's always a delay streaming it to YouTube.
Yeah. All right.
Is there something else attached to that? Oh, no, there's a back sheet.
You need to sign this one. Yeah, the ESP has a back sheet. You guys got a 15, Tara, with 4 signatures? Oh, dummy. Awesome. All right. Do you guys have a preference on the article that we start with?
No.
All right. You want to jump into grievance procedures? So we had provided the district some grievance procedure updates to teacher Article 28, ESP Article 7, and para Article 18. And so the language is mirrored in all 3 of those contracts. So if we want to just look at one, we can, because it's the same in each contract.
Under Article 28.2, the definitions, the strike through portion, we don't have any particular issue or concern with that.
Okay.
There are other, just a quick on that point, there are other venues or avenues that employees can take to have the discussion with the district if there's a dispute over one of your own policies, right?
Sorry,
She was nodding, I'm thinking, oh, good. Someone's saying yes to me.
Yeah, ask that question one more time.
Sure. So let me give you the why I struck that out. It's a waste of time, right? Because it doesn't land on, we don't land on final and binding anything. It's just a conversation, right? So we filed a grievance on one of your policies. And the usual characters get together and we discuss why the policy is being violated or not being enforced or whatever. And regardless of what you say is step 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't go anywhere from that point, right? Because it doesn't land in front of an arbitrator that can give you a final and binding ruling. So it's really more of a conversation that we're having. So if you have a policy, a district policy that may not be in the contract that you may not be enforcing, or you may be violating, or you may not, whatever our position may be, there are other venues to have that kind of conversation with. Do you agree?
Outside of the grievance.
Outside of the grievance process, yeah.
Yeah, I would think
So it
that,
wouldn't be a grievance. It would.
no, I mean, if there is some concern about a misapplication of the policy, or maybe even just a basic understanding of the policy, it would be no different than just some sit down and informal conversation to say, hey,
Yeah.
Can you explain this to me? Because sometimes, policy is just black and white. It says what it says.
Yeah.
And it's up to interpretation by the reader. And so, I think that.
And that's what really this is, right? Other than this is telling us file a grievance, which is paperwork for the sake of paperwork, right? Because we can have the same thing,
Right.
having to have that language.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, it's like the whole informal process
Yeah.
in the grievance procedure. I issue you a letter of discipline. You're not in agreement with it. So let's have some conversation initially to see if we can come to some type of resolution before I file a grievance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I would imagine, we do that anyway.
Yeah.
We do
I mean,
often, often.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and, and then.
So
Yeah,
as we were looking at this and wanting to change some things and maybe do some cleanup here and there, we thought that was a good cleanup piece.
All throughout the article, you've changed the term. You've removed or struck through the term dispositions, and you utilize the term proposed resolution. We really don't have any strong opinion about that one way or the other. We're always just kind of curious as to why you strike the existing language that's worked, for a period of time. I think I understand what you're trying to get at, but
The connotation of disposition versus resolution, we're trying to move this more towards that collaborative conversation to figure this out at the lowest level.
right.
And so dispositions, when people, employees, members read this, it's almost like there's a unnecessary power differential when you have a disposition versus resolutions. And so we want to change that more to a more working collaborative process than a power differential. And that's the reasoning behind the change there.
Yeah, and when I looked up the term proposed resolution, essentially what it means, it's informal, it's non-binding. It provides an opportunity for some further discussion, whereas one could surmise that disposition means that it's final. There's no room for any kind of discussion or anything of that nature. And I kind of likened it when we provide you all with a grievance disposition. It's actually really a resolution. It says, hey, this is how we think.
Yes.
But you all, it leaves the door open for you to say, we're kind of there. We're kind of there. We're kind of there, but I think we're going to prevail ourselves at the second step or the third step of the grievance process. Okay. Yeah. So I don't have any issues with that. The district shall require prospective participants to attend step 2 and step 3 grievances. I think we'd like to introduce a scheduling clause. And I think actually we had something prepared. Let me see. Where's that document?
That's just an email.
Yeah. So when we discuss this with our legal counsel,
Who would that be?
Don Wilson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Don Wilson. Yeah, Don Wilson helps us with a lot of our labor stuff and things of that nature. he recommended, and we would tend to agree that you use the words participants. And then those employees of the district who are employees of the district and they're reasonably available. So we understand that there are some people that you all would like to have in some of these proceedings who may have information that is relevant to those proceedings. But understanding that you have testing, some of these may be administrators that have got buildings to run and things of that nature. We want to just introduce a scheduling clause that essentially says they'll be available, they'll be reasonably available. And we'll get something crafted and drafted, but we're not opposed to having them available and making them available as long as they're.
So what was the phrase that Don had suggested?
Yeah, it says both of these changes require that the district ensures that prospective participants are present at the meeting. I would add the words participants who are employees of the district and are reasonably available.
Yeah, the reasonably available shall ensure, it's up to you guys to ensure it, right? However that works on your end, it works on your end. So in other words, so if you say, Wilfredo, I'm gonna use Kevin for a change. They say, look, Kevin, I can ensure that Principal X will be at the meeting, but it has to happen after testing. It'll have to happen, right? Because the insurance goes to you, not to us.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how I'm interpreting that. What was the last phrase you used?
Reasonably available.
Reasonably available. I'm not necessarily opposed to that because you guys have always been very reasonable. Very reasonable in terms of providing folks.
And it really comes down to scheduling at the end. So if you all propose dates that don't necessarily line up with the people who you would like to have present, then, we massage those dates until it tends to work.
Is that how you're defining reasonably available?
Yes.
There's some kind of scheduling conflict. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So are you guys okay if we go in, are you guys okay with lifting what Don had said? We're okay with that phrase so that we can maybe get this wrapped up today then.
Yeah, we can go ahead and
so we'll go through the rest of it and then I can pull up my computer and we can add that in.
So step 3, we talk about the proposed resolutions. We're okay with that. You struck through transmitted an email. We're okay with that. Chairperson, we have no problem with that. Where we're going to have a challenge and where we may feel like that there needs to be some adjustments is we know it's difficult to hold a special board meeting in 15 days. And so we would suggest changing that to 30 days.
That's it.
And you're okay with us striking the briefs because we actually haven't done that in quite a while. Exchange briefs.
Yeah.
At the step 3. Okay.
30 days is fine.
Yeah, we're okay with 30 days.
Okay. All right. Again, we're talking about proposed resolutions. You all want to strike through American Arbitrators Association and go with the FMRS.
It's cheaper for both parties.
Yeah.
And the American Arbitration Association is more for like corporate, like your Googles, your Microsofts. It's way more expensive than it needs to be for our level of arbitration. And that's the reason why we want to strike it. It's cheaper for both of us if we did need to take something to arbitration.
Yeah, and while we can appreciate cheaper and things of that nature, we're probably going to have to push back on that. We want to keep that in there because it gives us options, or we can add federal mediation reconciliation services. I checked a couple of other districts and they have both. They recognize both in there, and so it just gives the district some options to choose from as opposed to just settling on one.
Well, let me try it this way then. So the FMCS, those are our tax dollars at work, right? They've got the same list of arbitrators. They cost less. Their applications are online. They're quicker, faster, and our taxes pay for it. right? So everyone here contributes to the FMCS to make sure that's running. And they have very good, for free mediation courses for both parties, a school, HR and union, however, they got all kinds of free courses that they would come in and help train us and so forth and so forth. And I've been a part of many of those. So FMCS has a lot of different advantages that the AAA does not have. Now, AAA has those type of things, but they are really expensive. And they are really more designed for international arbitration situations, the bigger corporations. They do have a labor specialist, a special wing or part of what they do. But that's it. That's all they've got. And I think that I remember when Stephanie first became president, she brought us all together in a Dare to Lead course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So FMCS, you remember
Renee
that?
Brown.
Yeah. So FMCS has something not like that, but had courses like that we might be able to take advantage of. So that's why I don't know how you guys landed on AAA decades ago, but AAA is really is not appropriate for the type of labor relations that we kind of want to go with. So FMCS is there. Same list of arbitrators. There's no different because at the end of the day, it's the arbitrator. But built into each agency, one being private, one being governmental, the governmental offers way more better advantage and a lot more information that we can take advantage of. Here's a good example. They have labor management training for free and no cost to either party. So which is something, Mr. High was worried about when he had mentioned training the other day. So I guess we're confused as to, since, money is something that we want to kind of guard against, right? Or kind of make sure we're not spending unnecessarily, why AAA makes sense.
Well, quite frankly, just in the guise of transparency, our legal thinks that they actually have better arbitrators over there as opposed to, and that's based on their experience in working with arbitrators on a fairly consistent basis. Just feel like the AAA has a better pool or bench of arbitrators. And like I said, when I did some research on other districts like or similar to us with similar language, they had both of these arbitrating services in there. And so if you want to just add that, I think that'll move us on down the road. But if we want to strike and stay with the singular.
Okay, we'll add it.
And can we add in that it's mutually agreeable? Like both, whenever we get to, like if we get to a situation where we do have to move something to arbitration, both parties, or if we decide it's AAA or if we decide it's FMCS, that both parties agree, because we share the cost of that. And so I think we need to make sure that both parties are in agreement that we're moving to AAA or moving to FMCS, knowing the associated costs with AAA. Since both parties share that responsibility.
So how cost works?
So right now, just to file an arbitration with AAA is what, $300? File with FMCS, it's like $25, and then they're faster. So the cost per hour with billing ends up being less. And so just the overall cost of the arbitration, if something had to move that way, is cheaper total, which saves our members money. It saves you guys money in the long run. So the list of arbitrators is fairly similar. And so we're okay with keeping it in if we add in FMCS, but I would like it that we mutually agree upon in the event of an arbitration, which agency we're going to use for that particular arbitration.
How would we resolve if there was a disagreement?
The way we resolve it, and Stephanie's right, the cost to file for arbitration, I think it's $325, $375, somewhere around there. And then the administrative cost that goes along with that. So it's money attached to that. Where the FMCS is not. I think it's a $35 to $50. That's it to file it. And the administrative cost is the arbitrator's costs and his expenses and whatever comes along with that. That's it.
I mean, to me, just talking through this, to me, if we wanted AAA and you guys wanted an FMCS arbitrator, if we were insistent for whatever reason that we wanted a AAA, I would almost think that we would have to pick up the cost differential. Right. And so if it costs more, we would have to carry that burden. And if you wanted a AAA arbitrator versus an FMCS and we didn't, you would have to pick up the additional cost. So we would split like what it would cost for an FMCS and then split that in half. And then you guys would have to pick up, or we would have to pick up the additional cost, if the arbitrator was more expensive.
Or if it's an arbitration that we're pursuing to termination, whatever they were pursuing, then we pick FMCS. If it's an arbitration that you're pursuing and AAA is where your heart is, then you pick AAA and you pick up the cost for the filing and everything that kind of goes along the way.
And then vice versa.
At the end of the day, what we're looking for, Jason, is a neutral arbitrator. Both agencies, one private, one governmental, they have neutral arbitrators. They know their stuff. You don't know them. We might know them here and there, but they don't have any. They're arbitrators.
We were really just
You had
looking to reduce
stated
the cost.
That same arbitrators are on,
The list, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a list.
arbitrators are.
The pool of arbitrators is,
It's basically the same. I mean, they're in this local area. Unless you guys want to pay for an arbitrator that comes out of Chicago, I guess we can do that. But they're usually chosen from the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Region. I don't know what they call it. But the administrator, the paperwork, the filing, all of
it's
that,
all cheaper. too.
AAA does it it's cost. It's cost. When we can do it for FMCS, let's say for $50. I think it's $50 or $35. It's a $35 fee. You just file it, and they're sending you and I both the list of arbitrators. At that point, we take care of our administrative own, you take care of your own administrative own, and we get together and figure out who we're going to pick. That's really the purpose. When I looked at AAA,
We were looking at a cost savings. If in the event, and we don't really take too many things to arbitration, we really don't. But in the event that we did, it is a cost savings for both parties. With a relatively similar or the same list of arbitrators.
Understood. Let's because we don't want this to be a sticking point.
Yeah.
I'm good if we just add it. Right. And then with the caveat that, we'll mutually decide where things are going to land if we're going to use AAA, if we're going to use FMCS.
Okay.
but Jason's point is question is
valid.
critical, which is what happens if
We don't agree.
we don't agree. So for example, fast forward to the next generation of folks that be sitting here, right? And your counterpart says, I want FMCS. And whoever sits on this side says, I want AAA. How do you solve that issue? Right? Go to arbitration. No, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, what do you do there, right? When, we're not Microsoft. I mean, AAA really is designed for corporate arbitrations, and their rules are they mirror almost courtroom, right? And that's not an arbitration in many respects, but for labor relations anyway. You have some rules here and there, but it's for international arbitration. I asked Angela, how in God's name, how did you, because she's brilliant. How did we end up with this AAA thing here? This is rare in labor contracts. And like you said, it's like for whatever reason, they just picked that one and it's carried it on. When we have a perfectly good federal agency that costs us $35 and give us the list they were looking for, which is neutral arbitrators.
I wish our historian was here to give us some perspective. I'm talking Laura McCabe.
Oh, I was thinking, is Marianne here? She's somewhere.
No,
Serrano, how do you say his name?
That makes sense. Was it Ron Serrano?
Ron Serrano.
Yeah, that makes sense.
no. What I was asking is the last time we did go to arbitration. Well, we probably use this because that was the only thing that we had. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I answered that question.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to necessarily caucus. I don't want to caucus on something that we will be able to come to some. Can we finish up the rest of this and then?
Yeah,
circle back?
sure.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Absolutely.
So under miscellaneous provisions. However, the board shall continue to share the cost of the arbitrator and the expenses. If the board refuses to arbitrate a grievance arising under this agreement, the arbitrator appointed according to the above grievance procedures shall proceed on an ex parte basis. However, the board shall continue to share the cost of the arbitrator and the expenses. In my 6 years, I don't ever call the board not being willing to arbitrate or participate in an arbitration. I don't know. And so where's this coming from?
This comes from, and the board has done that. So we have filed a grievance on behalf of Matthew Pelletier, which we try to resolve, right? We ended up, once we kind of did a grievance analysis of where we stand on position, we filed a class action grievance on behalf of all teachers. The HR department did an excellent job. They met, they provided the arguments, and they followed the process, which is what I expect. Is that I think if Brian here, he would say process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the process completely came to an end, and at some point we have a right to determine this is a strategy the employer is employing, is that we communicated to step 3, which would be the board, right? And then that happened, and then we moved on to arbitration. There was no response from the employer when it came to, I think, step 3, or beyond step 3, which takes us to arbitration. Mm-hmm. So we have many, many, many emails that maybe some of you here are a part of. I'm communicating to Wes Bridges, is his last name? Mm-hmm. Well, Wes Bridges. So my understanding is that Mr. Bridges is a licensed attorney in the state of Florida. And it is unbelievably unusual to have someone who's a practicing attorney not respond to legitimate business emails regarding a pending arbitration that will cost his client money if he loses, right? And I could not get him to respond. We have an arbitration. We need to pick an arbitrator. I communicated with AAA. That took that cost us a little bit of a nickel, right? And said, are you getting has the employer communicated with you? And the answer was no. They're not responding to any of my emails. So I'm assuming it's somewhere in your work email as well. So nonetheless, thanks to, and you got to thank Stephanie Yoakum and Mr. Hyde, who kind of looked at the issue, went through it, and figured out a solution. At the end of the day, we ended up paying the cost of all that unnecessarily. And so if the district in that instant, and again, I have to make some assumptions. I can't because I'm not sitting in your office. If the district takes a strategy, a tactic of just simply do not respond at all to the union, right? And the contract allows us to proceed ex parte to arbitration, right? You should bear that cost of your strategy as well, right? And because we had no choice but to determine, Kevin, Stephanie, and I, looking at this case, what do we do next? We move forward because we're not getting any responses from Mr. Wes Bridges. So in the future, if that is going to be a strategy that the employer takes, do not respond to the union once you get to beyond step 3, right? Which is again after we've met with the board, go to arbitration, then the employer should bear the cost of that as well, right? So that's where
not the full cost, but the split.
The split, right? Did I say full cost?
Or you just say cost. I was just clarifying.
The split, right? So that's sort of that
was the genesis of putting this in there. Was it the expectation was already there that we split the cost of this anyway, but in the event that we ended up with that very situation, if we get in a situation where we have to move forward, but we're getting no response, whether it's completely different on this side, completely different on here, because contract language, exists past us, that there is an assurance that we continue to split the costs, even if the board's unresponsive.
And it's really, that's the best that we can do to kind of avoid that in the future, because in this particular arbitration, had it gone to arbitration, it would have been just the union up there because the contract allows us to go ex parte. The employer would had the arbitrator ruled in our favor, you would have been the employer been looking at over 200 teachers having to reevaluate, and God knows what costs would have been associated with that, which was certainly, if I'm the client, right, would have sent red flags for me and said, bring my lawyer into my office. I want to find out why I'm stuck with this bill and he never responded to our emails, to the union's emails. I mean, I believe that attorneys have a fiduciary duty to their clients. And so Mr. Hyde and Ms. Yoakum did an amazing job in resolving that issue. So the best that we can do in terms of making sure that if you take that strategy in the future, and again, I'm not saying you guys, but as I have to say as the employer, that there's something, a little bit of a cost attached to it, which is splitting the arbitrator, the cost of filing and the cost of the arbitrator.
Yeah, I can't speak for Mr. Bridges, and he's not here to speak for himself. I think that was an anomaly, and it's not something that has happened in at least the 6 years that I've been here, and we have gone to arbitration. I don't believe it's unreasonable that if someone chose to deploy that tactic, which certainly we would hope that wouldn't be the case, that we would bear some of the costs, but I'm not quite
And
sure.
we're not saying it was intentional or unintentional. It's just we as an organization need some assurances and protections that if something like that were to happen, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that we're not having the burden of the full arbitration costs. Because we are already splitting it anyway, and we want to ensure that continues to happen. And that was the genesis of that sentence being added.
We're talking about, this is the genesis of it, and it had to do with the Pelletier grievance and the arbitration. And one of the things that the PEA is asking, it says, if the board refuses to arbitrate a grievance arising under this agreement, the arbitrator appointed according to the above grievance procedure shall proceed on an ex parte basis.
Which is existing language.
Yeah, that's existing language, but the additional language is, however, the board shall continue to share the cost of the arbitrator and the expenses. So essentially what they're asking is that if the board chooses not to arbitrate a situation, that they will still bear at least a portion of the cost of that arbitration. Where are you at?
Page 2? No.
Teacher
Article 28. Teacher Article 28. Under miscellaneous provisions.
I don't think I have that.
So the expectation in the grievance procedure articles is that in arbitration, we share the costs anyway. And so we just want to make sure that if in the existing language, that if we had to proceed on an ex parte basis, that the board still continues to share that cost.
We'll have to talk to Wes.
You sure?
Yeah. Because you're asking me to waive a board right, and I don't know if it's applicable, because the board takes action and says we're refusing to participate in arbitration or denying arbitration. So I can't erode the board's rights and privileges. I don't have that. So I'll speak with the attorney.
Happy to do so. And then finally, we've got miscellaneous provision 14.
Actually, I want to respond to that. We're not asking to
We're asking the board to assume responsibility and liability for payment for something they're denying. and asking me to agree to that here in negotiation.
Gotcha. All right, I'll make
Mhm.
sure. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. I thought I heard something else, but go ahead.
You all's proposal, an employee whose discipline is eligible for DOA hearing, Division of Administrative Hearing, shall have the option of either arbitration codified within this article or a DOA hearing. If the employee opts for a DOA hearing, the administrative law judge's recommendation to the district shall be final and binding on all parties in agreement. We can't, we're not going to be able to agree to that because again, Florida statute directs the board's authority. And so section 126.6.6A requires that a hearing for an employee being terminated or suspended shall be heard by the school board or a DOA administrative hearing. It's one or the other. The employee can either decide to go to the school board and have their grievance heard or a DOA hearing. And that the school board has the option of the form. So if the employee decides, I want a DOA, then that's what they choose, or I'm going to go to arbitration, or I want the board to hear it. And so
Where does it say that? Who? Could you read that one more time? Where is it codified that they only get either or?
Because they either get the grievance procedure.
Yeah,
Statute section 120.68 subsection 6 subsection A.
Because the way we've been operating, at least this year, because we've had that discussion of
Mhm.
doing the parallel, and we have agreed, and I think you did a lot of research on that too, Tony. And we've actually done a lot of research statewide that choosing DOA or the grievance, they have parallel options. And so they can have DOA going on at the same time as they have a grievance going on. And a grievance, if they go before the school board in step 3 in a grievance procedure, then they do have an option of step 4, which is arbitration, and arbitration is binding, whatever the decision is. And so what we're trying to do here is actually kind of make less work on everybody's end,
Mhm.
because as they are choosing DOA, we have to advise them that DOA is not binding right now, because
Mhm.
the administrative law judge can make a recommendation, the school board can accept it or not accept it.
Right.
Whereas through the grievance procedure, they will end up with a binding resolution, whether they agree with it or don't agree with it, but it's still binding.
Mhm.
And so when you have the two avenues, what we were trying to do is take away the parallel option that if we go through arbitration and the arbitrator says, yes, the employee is right, or no, the employee is wrong, and here's my binding resolution, we wanted that same outcome to be for DOA.
Yeah.
So that we can separate the two.
I may be able to explain why we cannot do that at this time better than Tony did a moment ago. There's actually existing case law. There is precedent across the state of Florida where various districts have denied a DOA ruling and then subsequently may have to litigate. But I personally was in Duval County.
Mhm.
We had a situation with an employee that went to DOA and the superintendent of the board denied the DOA ruling
Mhm.
and litigated and won
Mhm.
subsequently. So I don't know that we can say that here. I'd be more than happy, again, I hate to delay it, but I'd have to talk to Wes to see where he would think it would fall as far as procedural. Because again, there's enough precedent in established case law currently
Mhm.
that is not consistently what's done. And it's done that way intentionally. So I can't necessarily say yes to that. It's an interest. I mean, we talked about this topic previously, but I think that's the barrier to it at this time. So let me follow up with Mr. Bridges and see what other legal counsel is saying about that.
So I have a question to follow up with that. If we go through a few other things and we have the need to caucus, can we caucus, and could you possibly call Wes?
I can try. I mean, I don't.
I understand.
ruling
I understand.
Within a few seconds is rare
Yeah.
unless he happens to know the case law around it. But DOA is a touchy one because, again, the employee has the option.
Mhm.
The board then has the option to either accept a DOA ruling or not and enforce it potentially back to arbitration and or to another party
Mhm.
through litigation. And that has happened quite frequently. And I can't speak as historically why that's the case. I mean,
Mhm.
it just is what it is. So I don't think it's a matter that we may not even have a similar interest or, in this regard. It's just, is there established precedent case law that prohibits us from doing so?
Okay.
So,
All right.
but I'd be happy to talk to Wes if we caught.
Okay. Perfect. I guess because that's the end of that. So did you want to go back and talk about AAA and FMCS? It's in your email,
Yes.
since Mr. Hyde is here.
Show that email.
What's that?
Let me show the superintendent that email right there.
Oh,
So he has that information because I don't think he was copied on it.
Yeah.
Can you quote that statute for me again?
What's that?
Quote that statute you pulled out.
Florida statute, section 120.68, subsection 6, subsection A.
Thank you.
This is cheaper.
Significantly cheaper.
Yeah, and some of them.
so what if, can we,
Have the
so you don't
same-
object to AAA, you just object to their pricing?
Yes.
Then just add language that says the district will cover the difference in the cost.
Yeah, which is what we had talked about prior to you getting here.
I'm okay with that.
You're gonna add FMCS and then
So we'll add FMCS and the district will cover if the difference,
There's a cost.
if the district,
There's,
If we
if
pursue
there's
it
a,
through AAA, then
right.
okay,
so if you guys choose AAA to cover the cost.
Yeah,
we'll cover the difference.
they'll cover the difference. in
The difference in the cost.
And if we choose FMCS, it's only it's $35.
But we split that, you said, I thought,
Yeah, we do.
right?
We
So
split the
whatever,
cost of arbitration.
so we would look at whatever the AAA cost is, you would still cover what you would typically cost under FMCA, we would cover the balance.
Right.
So if they chose the more expensive option,
We pay for it.
they'd
pay
look
for it.
at what FMCS would cost.
So if the employer, I get it, but if the employer is taking a case to arbitration and the employer chooses AAA, they got it. If the union is taking a case to arbitration and we choose FMCS, split the cost.
Down the middle.
Okay.
Okay.
But again, you're still covering $17.50 or whatever it is of the 45 on AAA.
They charge.
Yeah,
I know, just want to make sure we're absolutely clear. And we
yeah,
don't,
yeah. Okay. So let me pull.
I still, Mr. Hyde, I just got to get your opinion.
sure.
What's the, our position is that AAA is really inappropriate for this type of labor relations, right? Because of its expense. They seem to be, I'm looking at their website, they seem to be more, their expertise in cybersecurity technologies, commercial construction, international. And then, of course, add in the cost.
Yeah.
Why not let AAA go?
Because we're deferring to external counsel and
Oh.
internal counsel to make the recommendation to maintain.
Yep.
more
Gotcha.
than one entity.
Got it. Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why if we can cover the cost, then the onus is on us.
All right. Okay, hold on. So I can make that
But
update when
it
we.
is, that's something we can always reopen with, later on if we found that they don't truly serve this population, this demographic or this need. But right now, the recommendation from internal and external counsel is maintain.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm operating the assumption we've done it.
Yep. Kevin, were you able to find that statute that Barry was quoting?
Yeah, 120.68. Last part of it
Subject
6A.
A.
6A. Says appellate procedure.
Appellate.
The reviewing court's decision may be mandatory, prohibitory, or declaratory in form, and it shall provide whatever relief is appropriate, irrespective of the original form of the petition. The court may, and then there's 1, 2, and B. Son, 2.
That's the court? What's the name of that statute?
It says,
I'll send it.
from our attorney, it says Florida statute, section 120.68, subsection 6, subsection A.
Nah, that doesn't apply here. That's the attorney. Yeah, that doesn't apply here. But okay, we'll go through it. Yeah. We'll go through it. Was that the guy? No, you weren't. Oh, that did not. I did not ready first. Oh, that guy. Okay. Seems like a nice guy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we want to, because I know Mr. Hyde said if we break, he can try to call Wes and then I can clean up what we had talked about and then review it. in the grievance and then come back?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. That way I'm not trying to do two things. All right, so let's, do we want to do one of yours now? Maybe article, do we want to do one? And have some discussion around Article 1?
Yeah, I think that Article 1 is just updating administrator titles. If I'm not-
So we had some questions after talking through it. So overall, because I crossed out on the back on page 2, where it says, and clerical administrative secretaries, I crossed out administrative, and I think we agreed on executive.
Mhm.
We're good with that. So there's no confusion with principal secretaries possibly not being covered, because we definitely cover principal secretaries. So we're good with the language on the back, editing to executive. After discussion with our legal folks, and just amongst us, we're okay with the strike through or to be employed that you had brought forth. Now, we do have some questions in the recognition part of this, because I know in the subcommittee for job descriptions, we have some of the sign language interpreters being, if they have a bachelor's degree with those other ones, they're being brought into the teacher contract for the job description change. So I think we need to preemptively add them in here, because they will be covered under the teacher contract, under the list of positions, since we're making that recommendation. And then the very last paragraph at the end of the recognition clause, the term teacher, when used here and after in the agreement, shall refer to all professional employees represented by the association in the bargaining unit. Any new instructional, non-managerial, or non-supervisory positions created by the board shall be considered as part of the bargaining unit. And so we had, as we were talking about this and rereading this, we think that the issue of provisional subs not being covered by a bargaining unit is actually solved here, because provisional subs are district employees, they're instructional positions, they do the job of a teacher. And so with this 2-sentence clause, we believe that provisional subs should be recognized in the teacher contract, even though they're not specifically listed. Mrs. Porteous made a decision unilaterally 4 or so years ago to just not recognize them anymore. But this clause, we believe that they should be recognized and be under our collective bargaining agreement specifically.
When we go into caucus, let us have some conversation about that.
Okay.
I have to ask a couple clarifying questions.
Yeah.
Oh, in caucus, not, okay, perfect. Okay. So, but we are good with what you had presented, but we wanted to raise that question.
Okay.
Specifically because we know that sign language interpreters, with the change in job description that's going to be presented, some of them are going to be moving into the teacher contract and putting them in that, and then with the provisional sub.
Could we put, instead of being that specific, could we just put a reopener clause in there? That should there be additional changes, because the timeline in which all those changes may occur could be delayed, and we could be deep into next year before we finally get to certain groups.
Well, and I actually think that the existing language allows for that, because it says.
I mean, I would prefer we do it that way.
Okay.
We can sign an
I'm
MOU each time.
I'm okay with that.
Write a new contract later.
I'm okay with that. I just wanted to bring up, because I know that we've had the discussion with provisional subs and actually covering them as a
I gotta
union.
get some clarification. It came up yesterday. I just haven't had time.
Yes. And so when we reread this, they are an instructional position. They do the job of a teacher. They should be covered under our unit. And so with that clause that's already in existence, we wanted to have that discussion with you all.
Yeah. Let us
Okay.
revisit that
Okay.
during our caucus time.
Perfect. Okay. Do we want to talk about board's rights, or do we want to talk about Article 14 teachers first?
Yeah, it's up to them, obviously.
Yeah, we really don't have a preference, because you guys had brought forth teacher 14 with the mentor, and we did have some questions around that, but we can talk about that, or we could go into board's rights.
And one more question on the mentor.
Go ahead.
What article was it?
Teacher 14.
Teacher 14. as we kind of have the conversation, if as a group, we feel like this is just going down a rabbit hole, how much of a priority is that for you? Right, so the mentoring.
Adding the changes in.
Adding
We
the
already
changes.
have existing language that addresses mentors.
We talking about 1410?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of procedural questions as we were discussing this.
The more we talked about it, it just sounded more
We
like,
actually, we were kind of going down a rabbit hole ourselves as we were discussing this. And so we kind of wanted to know where you landed on it, because since we have existing language to address mentors, we're perfectly fine having the discussion, but we want to see where you landed on, where you, with these proposed changes, since we already have something in place.
I would say rereading them. I mean, they're very intentional in ensuring that people only get paid when they fulfill the obligation. And so it's prorated so that they have to fulfill the 7 criteria,
That's not our issues. We're talking,
which
we have procedural questions, I guess. Let's just, since we're talking about, let's just
if
jump.
you're asking what I would, sorry, hang on a second. What I would support the language that's proposed in here, because we do need to be more explicit.
And I think we were, as we were,
Mentoring is going to continue to
No, no,
be a priority.
and we want it to be a priority, but we also, as we were talking through, we think there needs to be actually some more guidelines.
Okay.
And so,
in other words, your language is going to cause us. Can we caucus as a group? Kevin, we'll take a break, 5-minute break. Is it okay?
We're all gonna
All right, we are back from our caucus. In talking about the mentor language that the district has proposed in Article 14, I think we're going to propose in line with what Mr. Hyde has said, that we have some bumper rails on it, and that the association and the district will agree to develop guidelines around the mentorship program. I mean,
I agree.
can it be as simple as that? So adding a sentence at the end that says the district, I'll just type it.
We're asking before about how
Yeah.
people qualify to do it. And
Yeah.
the training.
Yeah. I would
Yes.
think that all of that would be wrapped in. Okay, so let me pull up. Okay. So district and the association agree to develop guidelines and procedures for training and placement and monitoring of mentor-mentee of the tech program, or mentor-mentee.
That works.
Okay, the district and the association agreed to develop guidelines and procedures for mentor training, assignment, and just mentor training and assignments.
No later than, pick a date.
No,
December of 2022.
when do you guys want this in? You guys want this in place maybe for the fall?
Well, I'd like to get it in fall, but I just know how crazy busy
Yeah.
HR and they're going to be right now. So it's probably going to have to be an August, September kind of deadline. But I think we can limp along till then,
Okay,
whatever you're comfortable with.
okay. Well, no later than, we can say no later in December and know that we will continue to work on it.
Perfect. I mean, the goal will be to get it done faster.
Yeah.
Much faster.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just said December 31st, 2022. So the sentence added in, the district and the association agree to develop guidelines and procedures for mentor training, assignments no later than December 31st, 2022. Okay. Then I believe actually that was the main piece. Because the changes that you guys have proposed for Appendix C, since we know that there's some other changes we have to do to Appendix C to add in the middle school athletic supplements that we had the MOU on, we can roll all of that into the Appendix C stuff when we bring the financial. That's part of the financial stuff. And we did have, I guess, the clarification, the completion of less than 4 and less than 7 mentoring tools. Was that
So after talking with other staff, the suggested edit to that would be completion of less than the 7 specified monitoring tools. PEC. And the rest of it would stay the same.
all right? So completion of less than the 7 mentoring tools will result in a prorated supplement, blah, blah, blah.
Now, I can't speak to what this means by specified mentoring. Are there more than 7 tools?
That I'm actually not sure of.
Yeah, I think according to Dee Dee, right, there's 7 specified mentoring tools.
I just don't know
Gotcha.
how important that word specified was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and right above that, she also added, it says, the last sentence that says, I guess that's all index. Subject to successful completion, upload, review, and approval by professional development staff of, and she just added the specified 7 mentoring tools for PEC
Mhm.
completion.
Well, so I guess maybe I have a question with that. And since we're not going to sign off on Appendix C yet, because there's other changes that need to be brought with that. Since above it says a minimum of 4. So would it really mean a completion of less than 4 would get a prorated if the minimum that you have to do is 4 anyway? So if you do less than 4, it's prorated? Maybe that's what that.
I think that's confusing. I just think it should say be prorated to only pay you for those who complete, period.
Yeah, because as it reads, it,
Be overcome.
I don't disagree, but I also don't want to mess up if Dee Dee has a system in place over there.
Yeah, she crossed out that less than 4
Okay,
and says that anything less than the 7.
less than the 7,
Will be
minimum of
prorated.
4.
but up there, to me, when I read it, and that's why I want to make sure we're not messing anything up on that Dee Dee has system wise. Because it says that they have a minimum of 4, but not to exceed 7.
Where do you?
It's up in the above that first paragraph, that last sentence.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And so that's kind of what's confusing to me
That's
because
stricken through on mine.
And
I see.
I was having a little trouble
Okay,
following it, but
okay,
she's crossed out any reference to the minimum of 4.
okay,
You
okay,
put the period after per assigned mentee.
Yeah.
okay. Okay, okay.
If you want to see.
Yes, please, actually, that will be helpful. Because I'm like
Read it.
having trouble following it. Okay, so
So hers is in red.
gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Just when we're getting ready to look at Appendix C with adding in the athletic middle school language that we had an MOU on, can you send that to me
Yes.
or have Laura send that to me so we can
Mhm.
merge it all together?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. We were okay with the other changes in 14. I mean, it was really mainly just instead of a specific online platform, changing it to just designated online platform, that's fine. And then referencing the supplemental salary schedule is fine. So I added in that sentence, so I'm going to read it just one more time, and then we can print and sign that one. So 14.10-3, the addition says the supplement is subject to approval by the professional development staff based on successful completion, uploading, review, and approval of the specific and minimum number of mentoring tools in the designated online platform. The addition from today is the district and the association agree to develop guidelines and procedures for mentor training and assignments no later than December 31st of 2022. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save and print. And I'm not going to print the Appendix C page. So it's going to say 5 of 6.
Okay.
And I'll make a reference that the 6 of 6 was the Appendix C. Oh, we need to copy the attendance sheet.
Sorry, I haven't signed it yet.
Yeah. And then that's gonna, Kevin, just take the 6 of 6 page off and just toss it because we're not signing off on Appendix C yet. Why did we even ask? Oh, well. Oh, well. Have a good day. What? Okay, so Kevin's gonna bring that in. Hey, Jason, I didn't get that. Not you, Jason. Not you, Jason.
No, after Kevin and I.
I got your back. You guys can't be culpable if I tell you to do something, right?
1/6, but 6 out.
Okay, yes. I know. I'm just joking around.
It says there's more to come.
Okay. Okay. So 6. I think before we have the 2 articles that you guys need to caucus on, the last thing I think on the table, other than the financial stuff, is board's rights. Have you guys been able to get
All the West.
What are board's rights?
the prescription drugs?
I did talk to Wes. He just left me a voicemail, actually. I had reached out to him about how we would look to potentially amend our current practice, but
It's teacher article 31, para 4, and ESP 3. The language is mirrored in all 3 contracts.
looking at.
It's all the same language, so it doesn't, we can pick an article and look at it.
31.3, who did that? Was that us?
No, we've presented this to you all.
Right, and we have a counter proposal.
Oh, we do not have that.
With that, they didn't send it to you.
Right, send it.
No, we don't have a counter.
They didn't send it.
No.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
will present it here today.
Yeah, we have a response to,
Oh, perfect.
yeah, we have a response to
Okay.
yours. So.
Do you need us to make copies? We don't have any, we don't have an email or anything to look at.
One page.
And is it reflected in all three? So
Yeah,
you just
it
need to
is.
make
It is.
one
Yeah,
copy?
Yeah, you just need to make one copy of this document.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have it either.
While we're waiting for copies, does anybody need anything to drink?
I saw that, yeah. Cinco de Mayo special.
I wish. We're working on that. See, he said Cinco de Mayo special. I know, we're working on that. We're currently a dry building.
They have nice little non-alcoholic margarita drinks.
I'm not gonna waste calories on that.
No, they're free, 0. Margaritaville at Walgreens.
That can't taste good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, just give us a second.
I don't think I have it either. We discussed it, like, I don't know if that's on it.
You said that.
I thought I printed.
That was theirs.
I'm hoping that yes.
There's ours. No, this is ours. This is ours. This is. That was in here.
I thought they were making copies. Hold on.
Yes.
Do we make copies for everybody? Can we maybe make 5 to spread them out? Those guys?
Who knows?
Do that.
Sorry.
Let me go grab them.
Yeah, just make 5 so that we can spread them out. See it. Yes. Right.
I don't know why that wasn't in the first read through last night.
Right. Oh, rethinking.
Is there a provision for changes? Or we just make a change and send it to them?
I think we need a Wi-Fi printer in here.
We're working on it's so
We're
bad.
gonna caucus for a minute.
Yeah, okay. Because I think once we read it, we'll need to caucus anyway. So just so on y'all side, you said you were going to caucus on grievance procedures and try to call Wes, Article 1, the recognition clause in the teacher contract, and then the board's rights stuff. And then we're going to caucus on the board's rights as well. Okay, so we will be taking a caucus. And then when we come back, we don't have a set time yet, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Got coffee, water.
Okay. So we are back from caucus and dinner break. So we are starting back up with the teacher 31, para 4, and ESP 3, the board rights, dealing with the prescription drug language that PEA proposed. The district has countered, and then they have given a revision. You guys want to read the revision?
I can read it.
Okay.
Board commits to creating and maintaining a drug-free workplace. The use of illegal drugs, abuse of prescription medication, or the abuse of alcohol should not be tolerated in accordance with drug-free workplace requirements. Employees are subject to drug screening as a result of any workplace injury or report of being under the influence. Under these conditions, the employee shall be administered a urine test that will indicate the presence of illegal substances. In the event that an employee tests positive, the employee should also be remanded for a blood draw. If the blood draw results in a blood level at or above 5 or more nanograms, the employee shall be considered under the influence and subject to termination regardless of the prescription status. Refusal to either the urine or blood test constitutes an act of insubordination and willful neglect of duty. The employee shall be responsible for any costs associated with the blood test.
So I had, we have a few questions. So if the urine test were to come back positive, but the blood level is below, are they good? Because they're not considered under the influence?
That is correct. We would address it.
So I think
if they test positive, but they're not considered under the influence, there is no disciplinary action to follow.
Okay. Definitely
in the presence of a prescription.
Okay.
To be very specific.
So here, that's where I wanted to go, because I think with this coupled with what we had proposed.
Well, your language went a little too far for us.
Well,
because it's,
so we can talk about that.
Because it said any prescription would invalidate, and that's not.
So I think coupled with this, but the assurance that if they do provide a prescription, as long as their blood level is under the threshold of considered under the influence, if they have a prescription for said substance, then the last sentence really, I think, a positive test for any substance that the employee has presented, and we can say within the blood level threshold, right, if they're not considered under the influence, even though it's maybe positive, if they presented a current invalid prescription from a licensed medical provider, shall not result in disciplinary action or corrective action of any kind.
So I started to add that. So if the employee tests positive on the initial urine screen, but is negative at the blood draw and provides a prescription,
a current valid prescription from a licensed medical provider, it shall not be there shall not be any
not be subject to
or corrective action of any kind.
And that into there.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say negative blood draw, because I think if it's below the threshold for under the influence. While he's typing that, do we know what the cost associated with a blood draw?
Maybe about $100 something bucks. We would have to go out to contract, because we had a long discussion about whether or not it would be appropriate to do in our employee health clinic. And we might actually just afford the employee the choice. You know, if they're concerned that they're going to the clinic and people may see them and someone talks about that's why they were there, but that's the cheaper alternative for them because it's covered, then.
So the blood draw would be available at the employee health.
We would have to verify, but currently I believe it would be.
Okay, so because that last sentence was worrisome for us, because again, we didn't know what the cost would be associated.
Yeah, we can actually bid it out and see what it would cost us, because we would, if we went outside the clinic, we would seek out. It's typically either done through a hospital or it's done in a different walk-in clinic. And we have to pick different ones depending on. We would regionalize it.
Yeah.
To make it convenient. And then what we'll have to do outside of the contract is we would probably talk with you about how testing is to take place, because presently our team goes to the location and does the urine test. If you test positive, in the absence of a prescription or whatever, or we're still going to test you with a prescription for your blood level, then they're going to require transportation because we believe that if it's not a workplace injury, if we believe somebody's under the influence, we would then notify a PEA representative. They would either be responsible for transporting that employee, and we could either, or they could ride along with somebody from HR, or they could drive independently, but we would give a time frame in which they need to report.
And that would be codified in a guideline that we would develop.
Yeah, because from a safety perspective,
If they're potentially under the influence.
exactly, yeah, we don't,
Absolutely.
because they're still on duty and there's still a huge level of liability. And so
Understand.
the district's obligated to make sure that they get to the next stop.
Point A to point B safely.
Right.
And I've shared with them, and I'll share it here. I've had this experience previously, and mid-route, I typically have gotten a call, and I get told, well, the employee has decided to resign. It happens, but at least that gives the ride. It does.
Building rep. No. I'm sorry. I apologize. For some reason, I heard, I'm going to stop by McDonald's because somebody.
No.
Sorry.
So the whole point is now, and again, we have to acknowledge that there are certain illegal substances that there'll never be a prescription for that we're going to terminate for.
This is prescription.
Cocaine, acid, those kinds. You're gone.
Yeah.
I think we all have to accept that.
I
can only accept
I would
a certain
concur with
level
you.
or threshold of self-medicating behavior before we have to kind of go through.
I would agree with you. I think we all would.
You know what?
We have a contract with Quest.
We would want to get the cost of. That's why we didn't put it here because it's very.
So
I've looked up online, and so I'm seeing costs range anywhere from like $50 to 150.
So could we, since we are going to be developing some of these guidelines, because we're not sure of the associated costs, or if the district, if through the employee clinic, can we strike through the employee shall be responsible right now until we figure out what cost that looks like, and if we can provide that through the employee clinic?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, the only,
Go ahead, Tony.
yeah, thank you, sir. The only lightweight concern I have regarding the employee health clinic is if the employee uses that for his or her regular health care.
Yeah.
They may view that as a conflict of interest. Oh, shoot, now I got to go over here.
To Tony's credit, he brought the issue up with Jason and the team to say, hey, Mr. Hyde, you got to consider the following. So I was like, you're right.
Well, and I think within, we have some precedent here in the fitness for duty that we have 3 providers outside of the employee clinic for that very reason.
Right.
For that very reason.
Yeah.
So if they're doing a fitness for duty, they're not seeing their provider at the employee clinic.
That's right.
Who they have a relationship with.
Yeah. But they may want to go over there.
Yeah, and they could, and maybe that's an option. So if we can strike through that last one until we actually figure out what this costs and what options we could provide. Could you send over what you edited?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
I think the part that we should also discuss, which I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we seem to be on the right track to agreement. But the part that might trip us up in this language is that the member is entitled to representation.
Yeah.
And so that, in your opinion, Tony, along that process, at what point if the member says I need a representative present, I mean, at what point do you think PA needs to be notified, the rep or whoever?
I think based on the totality of the circumstances and the severity, right then and there. I mean, if there is a building rep available. Now, one of the things that we would want to have you all possibly concede to, because oftentimes what happens is they either want
somebody from the office.
That's right, and that may not be reasonable or feasible based on the totality of the circumstances, because depending on what you got going on that particular day at that particular hour, you may not be available. And so we want to just afford them the representation. And so if there is a building rep there, let's use that building rep. And if that building rep along the way, they need to be on the phone, talking to you or talking to you or talking to you, getting some guidance and tutelage while they're taking them wherever they need to take them to, then you guys can talk to them and walk them through it on the phone, as opposed to delaying the process. Because one of the things we can't do is delay the process by a day. or even by several hours, waiting on you to get free.
Well, and adding this in, this would be something that we would add into our rep trainings, at the beginning, through the summer and beginning of the year, so that our reps were fully up to date on this process.
Right.
So those that test above the
5 or above.
5 or above, those are immediate terminations?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they're considered inebriated. So we took the threshold from various states. If you look it up, states that have approved, that's where we got the threshold from, the 5 nanograms.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because the issue of representation consistently comes up. At what point, does the rep step in? Why is the union here, right? At what point do we kind of step in and provide the guidance, or the council, I should say? Yeah.
Has there ever been an instance where we're going out to test an employee where you're not notified in advance? Because they refuse to ask for union. Because they refuse. Okay. If they don't ask for it, we'll discuss that, because it's because the practice can lead to requirement for us to transport an employee. It would make sense at that point to have representation, or at least afford it to them. As I said, I've had this happen in multiple districts, and it's not uncommon for the employee mid-out to say, I'd rather just resign.
Okay.
And we've had a dozen or so cases this year, so we're not talking about a large scope.
As a general rule, to Mr. Hyde's point, this isn't something that's widespread. In an employee base of 13,000 employees, we have anywhere between 12 to 15, 20 at the maximum, depending on if it's one of those really odd years. And some of our most recent stuff is because of it's COVID related. People are trying to deal with stress and in different ways and things of that nature. But as a general rule, 10 to 15 what we deal with.
Yeah.
Again, subject to board approval.
Right.
One last question. So you don't foresee a circumstance where you might offer, the district might offer a second, last chance agreement, a second agreement, something like that. You don't foresee that?
We do.
Okay.
You do? Okay.
So in the event that they do test positive, kind of how we've been operating now,
We would do a 10-day.
10-day,
As we currently move. However.
Because that would mean no prescriptions, but they're under, gotcha.
However,
Okay.
recognizing the heart, well, we're not required to do it. So respectfully, it's not bargainable at that point, because we're extending a courtesy beyond what we're required to do by law. So, and you're welcome to confer with your legal counsel. We would suspend 10 days without pay. However, if the employee has leave balance, they are more than welcome to apply that leave balance. It will still show as a suspension without pay, but because we wouldn't want an employee to go 2 weeks without pay, they're more than welcome to use their sick leave to compensate, to backfill the 2-week period of time. So we did vet that with Mr. Bridges, and he was in agreement. So
That's not the issue, yeah, because you have a right to discipline. So we're not saying that you don't have a right to discipline. I mean, you could issue 5 days, 7 days, and then the person still has access to file a grievance and dispute the 10 days. I mean, that's built into the cake. I mean, that process. What I'm referring to is that when you offer a last chance agreement, say the first sentence is, these are your new terms and conditions of employment, and then provide 15 bullet points, that every bullet point, as far as 447 is concerned, is subject to negotiations because of terms and conditions of employment. But if what you're saying, let me agree with you, because I'm gonna see if I can bridge the agreement. But if what you're saying is under these set of facts, right, will result into a 10-day suspension, we may offer a last chance agreement. That's the part I want to clarify, because if you're offering a last chance agreement, that's a term and condition of employment that we all know is in 447. We can negotiate that. Not that she or he walks away with nothing, but that's negotiation.
I think our position, respectfully, is we disagree with that position. because we're not required to offer it. And if that's going to become an issue.
No, the suspension you can offer. No, and let me try one more time.
But here's the point, that if the terms and conditions that come along with the suspension, meaning that next year we're going to monitor them as we currently do, if it becomes an issue where the requirements that we currently require we're not in agreement, then the district's only recourse then at that point is to not even offer it. We're not required to offer it. We can just terminate. We're not required to suspend. And so I think what HR has done is tried to extend an opportunity to its employees to be respectful and give them an opportunity to do what they need to do. But I do think there are certain conditions that the employee must adhere to in the subsequent year, just as we currently do for other situations. And that's a protection. And keep in mind, we're not a company. We're a public institution of education. And so think about the perception of the general public. If the perception of the public becomes that Polk County Public Schools does not discipline teachers who are under the influence, what does that say?
So this came to my head and I want to put this out there. So let's say somebody doesn't have a prescription for whatever they were tested for. They pop positive on the urine, but they are below the 5, regardless of prescription or not. So that means they're not under the influence. Would they be disciplined?
If they do not have a prescription, they would receive discipline, absolutely.
So would it be as severe as being under the influence versus not under the influence? Or would that be maybe dealt by a case by case? No, but even if they were under the influence, so under the influence is done though.
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, so if they're not, that's where you're saying those second or last chance.
That's correct. It would only apply to those without a prescription under the 5.
Gotcha.
If you're at or above that threshold, it's just like being drunk on campus.
Okay.
You're walking away.
Okay, that I was trying to separate those two in mind.
We're trying to become a little bit more
narrow.
I got you.
But while also establishing a high threshold and expectation. And I have not seen the letter, so I don't know how many requirements in there. I believe it's a mandatory referral to EAP. And then
it's random drug testing for them for a year, and upon completion of their EAP obligation and the random drug screening for a year, they're off the program.
I think those are the only 2 conditions that are in the letter.
Okay.
It's not.
It's the 10-day suspension, mandatory EAP, and random drug testing for 3 4 years.
And we would give them the option again not to have to forfeit a paycheck.
They have
It'll still be documented as an unpaid leave, but they can use their leave to backfill that gap in their salary.
So on the union part, they still have access to the union representation.
Yep.
If they choose to file a grievance on the termination or because let's assume it's a termination, they still have access to file a termination on the collective bargaining, what have you. So go through that process. Yeah. Okay.
There are so few, I'd even go so far, and I don't want to throw my HR department and investigators more work to do, but I would even go so far to say that under these 6 situations, we would force the employee to sign a form that says I'm either requesting or I'm denying PEA representation or ask me representation.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So, I mean, we'd have to talk that piece through, but in some instances, they're embarrassed and they don't want representation.
And there's
I don't want to force the issue on them either.
And there's language in the letter that's given to them that says that prior to you signing this agreement, and I'm paraphrasing it, prior to you signing this agreement, please feel free to meet with and discuss.
Yeah, that I was going to bring that up to Brian. I think it was one of Brian's letters. I wrote the letter. I know you guys. The phrase maybe. I think it should go what Mr. Hyde is saying. You
can modify it.
Yeah, and it said something you could share with
union representation.
Yeah, you could share with whoever it was. I forgot. I'll look up.
There need to be a clarifier of member. Union member.
Yeah. Well, we can work on that on the
we don't
back side
know.
of this.
Yeah,
because
They won't know.
They won't know.
We'll offer it to
So we can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't quantify it with the employee. I'll simply say, are you requesting PEA representation or not?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. And I think someone used a different phrase than that.
Yeah.
Something else.
We can handle those.
No, it says union representation.
Does it? Okay.
It does.
And the goal, and again, with the understanding that we would have to be very timely. So,
Yes.
if they're requesting Stephanie, but she's here in Bartow, we're talking about Haines City or Ridge community, with all due respect, we're going to say, no, the building rep needs to be the one.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Because we got to be timely.
Yeah, and that's essentially where we need you all's support in when they want to ring the phone and say, hey, I asked them for union representation. They told me no. I asked for Stephanie. Well, Stephanie's not available.
In the absence of the employee, if an employee denies PEA representation, then we would offer them transportation through either an administrator or somebody from HR. But that would be the extent of it.
Okay, we're good.
On the second item, Mr. Bridges requested that you define.
The grievance?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You have to announce that.
No, I didn't know, because there was two other things. There was the Article 1 with the recognition stuff, and I didn't know. Anyway, so we're talking grievance now.
Stephanie, I know that you want to, but just to let you know, Mr. It is more than 3. It's the employee waives the right to grieve a violation of the agreement. Automatic discharge. There's 8 bullet points. I'll let you go. I won't go through them, but there's 8, not just 3.
Okay.
And that's what triggers the member to say, hey, aren't you supposed to negotiate this for me? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I think we take a different.
Did you get my?
Yeah, I think we.
Yeah, I understand the position you're
All
putting.
right, got it. Thank you.
All right, so grievance.
So on the grievance one, Mr. Bridges is asking you to define what costs specifically you're referring to. If it's just the cost of the arbitration
Yes.
and not legal costs.
No, cost of the
You could
arbitration.
add that,
Mhm.
then it may be,
Yeah, that
he
it,
needs to look at it, but I think we're done.
we were referring to the cost of the actual arbitration. And that's codified earlier in the article, but was specifically with this situation, we wanted to make sure that practice was still moving forward.
Yeah, because he always asks 2 questions. Who else does this? And then
Yeah.
what specifically are they talking?
No, it's the cost of the arbitration. So none of our legal stuff, none of that. It was just the cost of,
$17.50 is what we told them.
Okay.
It was $35.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for FMCS, yes.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so it'd be the cost of the arbitration.
We will respectfully request that any arbitration that the board initially declines must go through
The cheaper of the two.
the bargain discount. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Absolutely kidding.
But yeah, that's what we're referring to with that. So would he like me to amend that and
You'll
send that to him?
And then send it. And then we
Okay.
can probably, at the next time we meet, I think we're done.
Okay, perfect. And so everything else in that was good except that one clause. And I guess we were talking about the DOA.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess we could take the position that we will fall back on what we've been doing
So
and filing the grievance and DOA at the same time.
So I don't think we're going to debate the issue about availability of DOA and
The grievance or arbitration.
arbitration, either happening concurrently or one subsequent to another.
Mhm.
Our only issue still after talking with Wes is the DOA piece. But only because there's existing case law, and I think he needs to do a little bit more due diligence to verify.
Case law that says, well, what's the issue?
Where school districts have not
Have waived the right.
accepted DOA ruling, and then they end up litigating as they do,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and then they're successful. So just saying we're going to accept it, and there are some very interesting scenarios that I would find that even PEA may be surprised that a DOA officer ruled a certain way.
Well, the DOA, they have a ruling and then they send it off to the school district, the school board as a recommendation.
Correct.
The board can either accept, not accept.
Right.
So that's one avenue. The other, and that's just.
And I think that's where we want to keep that.
So if you want to keep it that way, because the idea, we had 2 instances where the recommendation, we wanted the recommendation, I think, right? And the board rejected the recommendation. Now, the issue that it puts us in is that the member should know, and they all know, right? That, wait a minute, I want my arbitration, which is final and binding. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose big. But if I'm going to win, I want to win big. I want this to be binding. That process is useless to me. So there was this, my position is that, number one, I don't care about DOA. I honestly do not care about DOA. I care about my arbitration is final and binding. That's where I want to take my members with the issue, through. So are they entitled to both? Frankly, my position is, yeah, sure, whatever. We want to do DOA, but unless you give me in writing that you don't want to do arbitration, we're pursuing that path until you tell me otherwise.
Isn't that what you currently do?
Yes,
No.
but we currently parallel.
Oh,
We
parallel.
have been doing parallel lanes. What we were trying to avoid is doing really both sides doing double work,
The
if we
issue
could,
too, when you run them parallel, is you run the risk of two different opinions.
yes.
And regardless of the party, so even if we went to arbitration and it's considered binding
You can't do anything
in
with.
favor of the district, but you get a DOA ruling in favor of your position, let's be honest, it's not going to end there. It's
No,
going
the way I would say
to, it should, but it doesn't.
it should. The only time it would go forward is if the attorney is looking to make an extra nickel, because what matters is the final and binding, and a reasonable judge should look at that and say, well, no, the bindings don't matter. That's just a recommendation.
I don't disagree, but that doesn't, it won't oftentimes stop, it wouldn't stop us and it wouldn't stop you. If you felt really convinced about a particular issue and you wanted to proceed, because some of this then becomes, as you know, precedent setting.
Sure.
So there are really unique situations. So I try to look at it as openly as possible. So I'd like to keep both options there. If what you're looking for is a clarification on which triggers another or which one, arbitration, if it's binding, it's binding.
Well, and what we were running into, and this is why we had worked with Tony. Tony did a lot of research. Our state organization did a lot of research. And that's where we ended up running these parallel. People were going through the DOA process and the grievance procedure
For the same
because
issue.
for the same issue, because at the end of the day, if they chose DOA and let's say they didn't get the outcome they wanted, DOA is a recommendation. The school board could accept it or not accept it. But an arbitrator, whether they sided with the employee or didn't side with the employee, it's binding.
Yeah.
And so it's done.
Yeah, I would always recommend going first and then go to arbitration, but that's.
And so we've been running
Easy for me to say,
We've been running them parallel because
for timeliness.
for timeliness, for the timeline to preserve those.
And I don't want my guy sitting in the bench for 9 months while we wait for DOA to make a decision.
Sure.
Okay. So I will,
And I'll speak with Wes again tomorrow. I have a meeting with him tomorrow.
okay, so I'm going to make a note here that just to clarify that it's for the arbitration expenses, and I will send
Limited to
that.
the arbitration.
Yes. And then I'll send that to you and Wes.
Yeah.
And then we can maybe
Well, you
wrap
can
that
copy
up. Or yeah.
Add Wes, yeah.
Add Wes. Okay. Okay. So I'll make that note and send that over. I'll do that before we leave tonight.
And if you're sending it, could you highlight the section where you said it's codified earlier so Wes can do the reflective?
Yes. Yes. I
It'll
sure
just make
can.
his job easier.
Yep. Sure can. Okay. So Kevin, I printed 31, 4, and 3 for the ESP teacher and para. So you got to go. Okay. Well, those were the two, I think, big ones. So we're good to talk about Article 1.
Sorry for.
That's the with the provisional subs. We were good. We were good with y'all's.
I need literally 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, while this is printing and while we start signing, y'all thing. So we'll get all that prepared and ready to go.
You ever turn this off?
Yeah, let's turn the mics off for it'll be 5 minutes and then we'll come back.
Nope.
Oh, it's already on. Okay, so we are back from our short caucus. We are preparing the teacher Article 31, board's rights, para Article 4, board's rights, and ESP Article 3, board's rights for signature. Oh, actually. Yeah.
That's for
Wait, that's your 31. Oh, I need to attach the attendance sheet. Hand that back to me. Actually, you take this one. Wait. ESP. Yeah, the para. Oh, I need to do that too. Sorry. All right. Awesome. Okay. And so Article 1.
relative to the.
The provisional sub.
Yes, at this point in time, we really don't have any real issue with that. However, we would just like to kind of go back and have some discussion with certification
Okay.
regarding the provisional subs. But I think we can get to where we need to get to
Okay.
with the provisionals.
So we'll hold this.
Yeah, just-
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
hold this.
hold it till the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that wraps up everything on our agenda.
The next time.
Yes, because we know we all really the big piece left is the financial parts. And so I know we are trying to get the support subcommittee for the job description reviews together one more time. I know me, you, Wilfredo, and Heather, me, you, Wilfredo, and Brian still need to kind of present ours. And we have, if we're creating some of those pay grades like we had discussed earlier, we need to, and I'm going to work on some of that and kind of give you guys some drafts from the notes so we can work with JD. But really the biggest part now is wrapping up the financial side of things. And we need to meet again for the finance subcommittee.
I would prefer that we meet for the subcommittee after we take the fourth class, just so that we have the most information available,
Okay.
of course.
Because there is really no new information.
Gotcha.
That-
Well, and we really only have one more week, right? If it's supposed to be on the 16th.
Right.
Right.
I hate to, say.
Well, so can next week, can we try to get on a Teams with the job description review committee to try to get that wrapped up? And then that way we're prepared then that's one more piece that's off the platter with the job description reviews to finish out that first tier. we can finish that up maybe next week sometime if we can find some time we can all try to work around. And then when you guys get the fourth calc on the week of the 16th, meet that week. And even if we have to try to, move things around to prioritize, because if we can get this tentatively agreed to and advertised before they leave, we can have this wrapped up so that we can have this all, the board can vote on it, our folks can vote on it, and then it can really be in effect July 1.
Agreed. Operating under the premise that Article 1 and then the grievance piece, those are just really minor issues.
We really just have the compensation stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the meeting because how can we clear that up maybe electronically?
We could possibly do that.
Yeah,
I think we would be agreeable to that.
Yeah, because
and then we can
we're
just sign
close.
off when we're in person.
Yeah, we're close on that. And so, that way
that's fine.
That way we're not meeting just for the purpose of those two things. We're not going to jump into the meaty,
absolutely
weighty stuff of the money.
Absolutely. And kind of what we were envisioning too is within those subcommittees, really finding where we're going to land and then kind of bringing that joint recommendation so that we're not really hashing too much out at the table. Your team will be fully apprised. We'll be meeting with our team, going through it, and then we'll really just be coming back, hopefully just one more time to explain, finish signing on this little stuff. We can work that out, I think, electronically at this point because we're right there. Because there's nothing earth shattering that's left.
Right, that's right.
And then we can work out the compensation pieces and the subcommittees, and then we'll be meeting with our team and going through that. Y'all will be meeting with your full team. Because I think it's just you, Jason, Heather, and JD kind of on the finance side of this. And then he can fill everybody else in, you guys can. And then we'll just kind of more be coming to the table, bringing joint recommendations and then going through what those recommendations are. And then we can sign off at the big table. So we probably only need one more big table meeting because a lot of this work is being done in subcommittee to bring joint recommendations.
The only real correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the support committee, the job descriptions are done. They've been reviewed. So it's really the placement. It's a conversation, right? And then once that's done, a recommend consensus on the placement.
And I can get with you guys because it's for the four of us because we're the ones that have the four that still need to be presented. So we could get together, even if it's just on a call between the four of us, me, you, Brian, and me, Wilfredo, Brian, and Heather, to solidify just because we need to assign some pay grades to some of those new job descriptions. And then we can meet as a group just to present and, if there's any questions or anything that pops out at them as we discuss and kind of build just consensus among that. So then that's one more thing that we can just kind of, that we could present as a package almost. I don't know if package is the right word, but the work that we've done in that subcommittee, we can bring to the big table. Because I think if we can get those in the next 2 weeks between the support staff wrapped up maybe next week, and then once you guys get the fourth calc on the week of the 16th, we can finish up our other compensation pieces and we can get together just on the phone because I have a few things that I want to work on, but we can talk about that offline. And I can show you guys what we're doing. And that way we can, because I know you guys got a lot on your plate. The end of the year is insane for everybody right now. And so, I know we're all trying to do a lot of stuff and we all are being pulled in lots of directions. So we can work on a lot of this stuff, I think, in the background and then maybe only meet one more time at the big table. But we probably do need to look at calendars for that either at the end of the week of the 16th. Are you guys, am I talking like, and it's not?
I don't want there necessarily to be this big expectation that we're going to be able to move forward quickly on the pay grade assignments.
Okay.
Only because as of today,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at a $14 million loss. So that's why we want to have more information on the fourth calc to see if that situation has gotten better or worse.
Okay.
So.
Well, I guess what we're trying to do is not do some things that we know we're moving in that direction anyway, and not just get caught because we know we're working under tight timeframes here. And so my thought process is let's keep the work that we've been doing, move it forward, finalize it as a committee, right? In conjunction with knowing that's going on in the background too.
Look at the proposals and cost them out, but
Yes.
that it may not be something we can do right this second until we have more information.
Well, yeah. And so working, being prepared, knowing that other things are happening in the background and not just waiting, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's my thought process so that we don't get stuck with 2 weeks before kids are out and we're trying to scramble because we know that graduations start the week of the 16th. You start being pulled in all different directions. Mr. Hyde starts being pulled. Like we know that it's just a crazy time. So the more we can get done in our groups that we've been working in, knowing that we're waiting on the fourth calc, stuff like that, and we know we have work to do in Appendix C because we got to merge some things with the athletics stuff, those types of things, the school psychs initial placement, those little like things that we need to do that we're going to have to do regardless. That's what I'm trying to get out.
I'm very on board. I just hopefully got our fingers crossed.
Yes.
Things are going to move in the right direction, but I just.
No, I understand where you're coming from there, but I'm just trying to think of all the things that still are with those pieces that need to be worked on, knowing that we're working on them in the background before we come to the big table. Because really, I think the time we meet would really be we're coming to bring recommendations for salaries and all that kind of stuff, regardless of what they end up looking like, right? Because we're still working those pieces out.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we are done for today. So we got a little bit early. And so we're going to be wrapped up at 6:20 today. We will be advertising when we come back to the big table next. We currently don't have a date set, but be on the lookout for that within the next few weeks before school's out, because the hope is still to bring you a tentative agreement before we leave for summer break. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.